Welcome to Layers of Communication with your host, Lydia Taggart. Life presents experiences that add a layer to who we are and how we see the world, affecting how we communicate. Lydia is here to help you take apart the layers and create new ways to connect and build relationships. So now, please welcome the host of Layers of Communication, Lydia Taggart.
Hello, everybody. It's Lydia Taggart here. I'm glad to have you with me. And if you're on the replay, I'm glad for that too. I'm just glad to have you in any way that you can find this show. This is Layers of Communication, and we talk about how life's experiences layer on to who we are and how we see the world is affected by these layers that we see through. We look at life through these layers, and it affects our relationships. Today, we're going to be talking about suicide prevention, depression, and what can we do about it? How do we love these people back to life? I don't see our guest here with us yet. Let me take a moment to see if I can find her. Maybe she got lost somewhere. We're going to be visiting today with Melanie Brown. All right. So here's my thoughts on suicide and depression. I've had some experience with this in my life, in my family, and it's not really very fun. It's not fun at all. I usually like to have a personal story that I share with you to get into the show. Today, there's so many stories to choose from. I don't know which one to go with. So I'll just start by sharing a little bit about how I feel today. You know, school is getting out. These kids that are in school, our teenagers in particular, they're going to have a change in their routine, and their support system might not be there. If they're used to going to school and that's the routine and that's the expectation, that keeps them in this expectation of, when we have expectations, it creates a safe boundaries of what's going to happen that day, right? And so when we're not in school and we have, we have all of this free time and things to decide, what do we do? Do we just stay in bed all day? If there's not someone there or a schedule there saying this is what's expected and you need to get out of bed, some of us might tend to just stay in bed all day. And that doesn't help us to be any happier. So I view depression kind of in a different way than a lot of people do. I think that it's a genetically predisposed weakness, just like alcoholism. Lots of people can drink alcohol and it doesn't affect them. Other people have a history in their family that they become alcoholics, and it's difficult for them to have a drink without being dependent or addicted to that. Same thing with cigarette smoking. Some people try it, don't like it, want it whenever they want it, whatever. Other people try smoking and they're hooked and they can't get off of it. And I think that depression is very similar. We have this predisposed weakness to outside influences or the negative voices in our head, that it gets to us in a different way than a lot of other people who may not have that predisposed weakness. Oh, look, it's Melanie. I'm so glad you're here.
Yay.
Top of your forehead, though.
Let's try this. How's that?
That is great. So I was just sharing my thoughts about how I feel about depression, where I think it's kind of a predisposed weakness genetically, similar to some people can be alcoholics and other people, they can drink alcohol if they want to or not, and they don't get hooked on it. And it's somewhat tied to a family history sometimes. How do you feel about that?
You know, I think that can be true, that it can be genetic, but it's also related to trauma. You know,
of course.
It can definitely induce deep depression. Life experiences, can aggravate it, so it's really problematic.
Yes, and we're all different. So what affects one person would affect somebody else, maybe not at all or completely different. And so I think it's really important to know who we're working with and how all these different tools. I'm really excited. Melanie is going to be here today sharing more ideas and tools and how to love our people back to life, and particular teens. Let me introduce Melanie. Oh, I can introduce myself a little bit too. I'm Lydia Taggart, and you can find more information about me and what I'm doing, join my classes and whatnot on lydiataggart.com. Okay, so Melanie Brown, she loves walking along the ocean any chance that she can. She's thrilled to live her life in the beauty of the Utah mountains. I love both of those two. It's hard to choose which one I would want over the other. Just put the mountain right next to the beach, and that would be perfect for me. Melanie is the owner of Healing Hearts and Homes, and this is an organization dedicated to rebuilding family and marriage relationships. Her motto is, "We love them back to life." Mother of 9 children and grandmother to almost 15 grandchildren, expecting on 4th of July. What a fun day to be expecting. And she has a tremendous love for teenagers and how incredible these amazing human beings are. And I have a few teenagers, so I share in that love for teenagers. As Miss Salt Lake City, Utah, Miss Melanie has a great desire to have the opportunity to connect with families everywhere, to have open conversations about suicide prevention. And she says, "I truly believe that as we continue to have conversations, we can and will find the answers to prevention around this horrible epidemic that is taking out the incredible youth before they can live true to their massive potential." It is her life's work to save these lives. And she spent the last 10 years working with youth, and having lost a son to suicide 3 years ago, the last 3 years, she's been searching for answers, and now she has them, and she's going to share some of them with us today. I'm very, very excited for having Melanie Brown here with us today. She says she's going to spend the rest of her life saving every life she can. And I love that mission. It's really fabulous.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Sorry. We need to have this set up to mute people as they come in. I'm sorry about that. So Melanie, you've actually lost a son. I had, my son was suicidal, but he did not commit suicide. And I find that sometimes we think that we're out of it, like they've been cured, so to speak, and then, it still is a struggle. But people forget, and I think it's similar like when someone deals with a death in the family, you comfort them for a couple of weeks and then you let them deal with it on their own. And I think suicide and depression is very much like that too. Oh, you have an episode or something happens and you give it attention, then you move on. And I think that's a dangerous way to deal with it, but I don't know how to have people continuously checking on it. What are your thoughts on that?
Lydia, in my experience, people who complete a suicide in their 20s or 30s or 40s really are people who have struggled with it since they were teenagers. Mm-hmm. And that really is heartbreaking, right? To think that somebody could struggle for decades of their life. It isn't that it goes away. It really doesn't just go away. And it just happens to be that they keep it together just enough, and then something happens in life that pushes them over the edge and they're gone. And when they're gone in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, it has a stronger impact because they often have families they leave behind, right? And so if we can really make a difference with teenagers and really help them overcome their desire to feel like that's the solution in their life, then we won't have people for 10, 20, 30, 40 years that are struggling, right? We can take care of it now.
Yes.
And really, I do agree with you totally that if someone talks about it, or we're aware that they're having an issue with being suicidal, or they attempt and then they seem fine, we really want to just pretend that they're okay.
Yeah.
Maybe, right?
Or believe it. We want to believe it.
Yes, especially as parents. Oh my gosh, we just hope and pray that they're going to be all right. And I love that we're talking about it more,
Mm-hmm.
but it isn't true that it just goes away. It has to be that we help them make a significant shift and change inside themselves, that they put other tools in place that they learn so that they rely on those tools to deal with the emotions and the struggles and the relationships that are a problem for them, instead of thinking that suicide is the answer. So that really is the solution. We have to give them something else.
Right. We can't just say, you're done. And I think the other thing is we want to believe that they're better, but they also want to believe, and they want to have everybody else believe that they're better. And they're trying to, I think, sometimes ignore it as well. The case of my son, he has switched from depression to anger. And is not really depressed so much, but he has a lot of built up anger and has a hard time with that. And so I think that's another thing that we can watch for, that as we think that they're healing and going to be okay, that maybe they're just switching paths. What is one thing that we can do as parents or people who are working as guides for these teenagers, if we're teachers or counselors? What is one thing that you think makes the biggest impact on these teenagers?
Well, I guess I want to follow up on the idea that you talked about, that they're also wanting to be done with it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Even teenagers who attempt suicide are scared by suicide. It really isn't that would be something that they would choose. It just feels like there's no other alternative. And it's really dangerous to leave them believing that they can't talk about it because we're scared. So as parents, it's super important that we are able to manage our own emotional response to their being suicidal, and try to hold space for them to be able to be real about it. I have a son who is still alive, who has struggled many, many times with suicide. And one of the things that I was able to successfully do with him, which I would hope that parents can come to a place of doing for their children and teenagers, is I created a space where he could come to me if he was feeling suicidal. And we had a plan. We had a plan for what to do. So our plan was to contact our physician to have him find a bed for him to be placed for several nights in an inpatient facility or a hospital so he could be safe. There are many places in Salt Lake City, and I'm sure in other places, that you can go to if you're feeling suicidal. Uni, Lakeview Hospital, several of the hospitals, you can go and they will put you where you're going to be safe. Okay, so we don't like to address that really when we're parents, but it's better than losing a child. And so again,
Yes.
if we can have open conversation about it, if they can feel safe to come to us and say, hey mom, or hey dad, I'm not feeling like I'm safe right now. And the first option isn't necessarily hospital. If there's a way that you can just be with them and make sure that they're not alone for a period of time so that they're safe. Because suicide and the drive to commit suicide is related to overwhelming emotion, and emotions pass, believe it or not, they do. And so you can be in a space of being suicidal, and if you can have help traversing that period of time where the emotions kind of are heavy and over the top of you, then it's like the waves of the ocean, right? They will recede, but you need to be able to have a real conversation with them. If I'm with you tonight, if I'm with you today, is that going to be enough? Are you going to be safe? Or do you feel like you need more care than that? And get them to be able to have a real conversation with you.
And I love that image of the ocean waves, because it does come in waves. I think it's like a monthly cycle. Sometimes we have moods and things that come in waves like that. And one thing that I wonder, I mean, my whole everything about having layers of communication and being able to connect with people at the core is to have that safe space and creating that environment and that relationship where we do feel safe. What would you suggest to parents who are in a similar situation, who maybe their child would say, you're trying to punish me and push me away when I need you to pull me closer and love me more. If you're going to send me away, it's not a punishment. How do you convey that to a child who's in that situation, that maybe they don't have that safe place built already yet?
To help them understand that going to the hospital is not punishment? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Just a treatment of some sort. That
you're sending them away because you love them, not because you don't want to deal with them, or that, because I could see that as pushing them further into depression. Oh, mom doesn't want me to be with me. Mom doesn't want to help me. But it's completely the opposite.
I think that we get, how would I say it? We just get anxious and worried over them. And so we want to get them help right away. Right.
Uh-huh.
And so we want to just like put them someplace right away sometimes. And what I would suggest, if they're feeling like it's, you don't want to bother with me, or this is a punishment for me, or because I've come and talked to you, you're just going to send me away every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I would just continue the conversation. Like, don't take them right away. They're not going to do something with you there. You can continue to sit with them and talk with them and, have them share with you what they feel like would help them, and help them get to the space where they realize that you are listening, that you are concerned and you care, and you want them to help you find a solution, or trust in you that this is the best solution. And that's also, why I feel like there needs to be conversations when teenagers aren't in crisis.
Yes.
We
oh
wait
my goodness, that's the thing.
Burning, and we have to do something right now because we're so scared. But we have to have the conversation when we're nervous about having it, when it's not a fire that's burning. I had a client some years ago who had lost her son to suicide, and she had a daughter left. And she came to me and she said, I went downstairs the other day in the family room, and my daughter was sitting on the couch and she was just staring at the gun cabinet. And it freaked me out, and I don't know what to do. And I said, did you talk to her? And she's like, oh, no, I can't. And I said, you have to. How wonderful it would be to have that conversation and just be like, I'm super concerned. This is what it looked like to me. You're sitting in the family room, you're staring at the gun cabinet. What are you thinking about? The chances are she was just zoning out, right?
Right.
Something. And if we don't have the conversation, then we don't know. We're making an assumption that makes us scared about them. And then we get really like helicoptery around them, right? Watching them in a moment when it may not be what they were thinking at all. But it does, even if it was the case, it opens up the conversation to, I'm really concerned about you. How are you doing? Do you struggle with this sometimes? And would you be willing to come to me and let me know when you are? And what kind of avenues can we think about that would be the best support to you? Because my struggle as a therapist really, often is people wait until they're, like, maybe you would say that they're needing to go to the emergency room of mental health.
Yes.
Yes. We wait until we have to go to the emergency room to get medical care. That's not always the best choice. If we would go to the doctor when it wasn't pneumonia, we might get care before we're hospitalized, right?
No, we just need a yearly checkup. Just
Yeah. I love
monthly
that you said that,
checkup.
because I would love if people would do that. I would love if people would come to me with their teenagers when they're concerned. I would love if people would come to me with their relationships when it's struggling, not when it's like, oh my gosh, you have to help us or we're done. Because
Yeah.
that is such, it's more like major surgery, right? It's more like a root canal instead of a filling.
Right.
If people would understand the difference, you can come to a mental health therapist when you're struggling, not when you're feeling crazy.
And can't we also go as preventative measures as well? We don't even have to be sick to go have a checkup and say, oh, you might want to watch what you're eating because you're gaining 3 pounds a week, instead of, hey, you've gained 50 pounds this month. You need some intervention here.
Absolutely.
So what are the signs that we should watch for to know that it might be something to be concerned about? Because I think sometimes we don't even know that we need to be concerned about it until it is a big concern.
Mm-hmm.
And so what should we watch for?
Well, part of the problem, Lydia, is teenagers are teenagers, right?
Yes.
And a lot of the signs that we kind of lay out for everybody around suicide are kind of like the signs of being a teenager. So
That's true.
It's a little bit of a struggle, right? It's when it reaches a level that it's worse than usual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a teenager that they're sleeping lots and lots, they just don't want to get out of bed. They aren't getting out of bed even to go spend time with friends or be social in any way. They are not eating, or they're eating all the time. They're not just annoyed, but they're angry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the level of the symptoms that they're struggling with. Because a regular teenager is going to be moody at times.
Of
right?
course. Yep.
A regular teenager likes to sleep, let's face it, right? Because we're crazy and we start high school at like ridiculous hours of the morning, if you ask me. But and I understand why they do it, but it's hard on teenagers, right? They need more sleep. And yet they have this deal where they just want to usually like socialize and never sleep. So
Right.
they're always tired. So they don't always manage things well. But if they're sleeping more than usual, or they're not spending time with friends they would normally want to spend time with, they're avoiding going out, they're staying in bed and not going to school, they're moody and easily set off all the time, then I believe you just have to have the conversation.
We're going to have that weekly or monthly check-in. How are you? And we call it PPI in my mentoring program, the personal parent interview. And sometimes my teenagers, my oldest especially, he's 16 and he has Asperger's. So he'll be like, I don't know how to deal with something. And he'll just blurt out, Mom, I need a PPI. Huh. And then we'll sit down and say, what's going on? He's like, ask me questions.
I love it.
You better start asking me questions, Mom, because there's something going on and I don't know how to tell you.
You don't know where to start, right?
Yeah. And so we've set this up with all of my kids that we have these weekly, or we try to have them weekly. Sometimes it's kind of crazy in life, but they know that they can come and say, I need something from you and I need it now. And sometimes those conversations, they can last all night long if they need that. But having that checkup and having maybe a question or two that you could ask specifically, and maybe even talk with the teenager and say, what do you need me to ask you? I think that's important to know how people communicate and how they receive things. My husband this weekend, he said, okay, I'm obviously doing something wrong. And he was talking about my relationship with him. He's like, you're not responding the way I want you to. What should I be asking you instead? And I was like,
I love that.
Good job.
Yeah, that's awesome. I even recommend, because if you think about a family, any family, right? And you kind of correlate that to a business, because I'm very
Uh-huh.
business-minded. If it's a family where you have two parents, and not all of us do, let's face it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a family where you have two parents, or you have a parent and a support person, or a significant other, I recommend that you have a monthly board of directors meeting
That's wonderful.
where you sit down and you can discuss together, not just about the family, but also a couple's, like, let's talk about how's our relationship going, because your relationship is the foundation that provides the safe and secure foundation for your children. It
Yes.
really affects them so, so much how their parents are doing. In fact, studies have been done that kind of indicate that it's not a divorce that causes children to really kind of like go into a dangerous space with drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever. It's the contention in the family.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a divorce happen, and if the contention continues, there's still problems, right?
Right.
So if you have,
Or on the other hand, if there's contention and they're going to stay together for the kids, but they're still fighting the whole time, it's the same effect.
right, it's the contention that's the problem. And so kids really kind of they they relate to you, and they adapt based on you and the emotions and how things are going in your family and how stable they feel. So if you were to have like a monthly board of directors meeting, you and your husband, or you and your significant other, whoever you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you can not only talk about how are we doing, what is going on with us, what can we do to rebuild our relationship and make it more solid and stable and loving, you know. But you can discuss each of your children. What does Sarah need? What does Sam need? What does Amy need from us as parents? Like what's the top of the line problem for them, and how can we address that, right?
Right.
And that will help you kind of deal with problems before they become a fire for your children.
Right. I want to add also when you say your support person, because a lot of us don't have a significant other or a spouse, but it's so important to
Right.
have some support from someone. And I see some people who have like their mother, the grandmother to the children, or any variety of people. But it's really important to have someone there to support you, a best friend, a neighbor, somebody that because sometimes we need a timeout. And,
Right.
we get overwhelmed also. We get so anxious and worried, and we need to have someone to support, for lack of a better word.
Oh,
And, with my
yes, that's good.
husband, when he'll say, "What do you need? I can take the kids away. Do you need me to stay and do the dishes? What is it that you need?" And we can reach out and get that from other people too. Call a neighbor and say, "Hey, I really need to go to the grocery store by myself for a few minutes," or, you know,
Yeah, I definitely get that with 9 children, right?
yeah.
Michelle says you're her support person. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. I love you.
You know, I was a single parent for 9 years and with a large family. And I really totally agree with you. I would love for women, especially that are single moms, we just think, oh man, we ought to be able to handle this ourselves. And
Mhm.
pull up our big girl panties, and we're gonna make it on our own. And we all need support and help. We all need another person to bounce ideas off of, especially when we have a child or a teenager that is really struggling and in crisis. If we come across anything that indicates like drug use or self-harm or suicidality, and we freak out and we don't know what to do, we really do need to have trusted people in our lives to turn to and be like, hey, what do I do? I had I have a great friend from high school, and when my oldest daughter, got to be a certain age, she took her and got her on the pill, right?
Uh-huh.
I was so busy as a single parent, and I'd always planned on doing that, right? But as a single parent, you get overwhelmed. There's so much for you to manage, right?
Right.
And I just love so much that she just took that on herself, and she took her and talked to her and got her on the pill, to support making sure that she wasn't doing something that was going to affect the rest of her life in a negative way. And we we do need to trust that there are other people that we can rely on, that can give us a different perspective, maybe can calm our fears down, could step in when we're overwhelmed and we have other things we have to take care of.
Yeah, I remember, I know a lot of parents have this, when you have toddlers when they're younger and you just want to go to the bathroom by yourself. You just want to, if you lock the door, their fingers still come under the door and they're still there waiting for you, and you're not ever really alone. And, we think as, I think generally speaking, as a society, we need to be there for our kids when they're little to help them grow up. And then when they get old enough to manage themselves, then we go off to work and we don't worry about them as much because they can handle it. They need to transition into being an adult and be self-sufficient. But I feel like sometimes that stage is even more critical than teaching them how to be potty trained and stuff like that. I think teenagers really need someone to be there. They don't want us to be there necessarily, but they need to know that they have an adult available for them when they do have something that they need. And I just wish that we could figure out a way to make that transition so smooth that they just still feel like they belong, and they still feel like we care about them and understand the overwhelming emotion. Is there a tool that you use more often than other tools to help deal with overwhelming emotions? Is it just waiting for it to pass, or is there something else that you recommend?
Well, before I get into that, I just wanted to address what you were saying about toddlers to teenagers, right? Toddlers to teenagers. So you're right. We tend to really pay attention, obviously, to a 2, 3, 4-year-old. We don't want them walking out in the street or sticking a fork in an outlet, or
Yes.
or pulling something heavy down on their head. And so we have to pay attention because there are things they don't understand and they don't know, right? And then again, like you said, they get a little bit older, they get a little bit more independent, thank goodness, right? And we can
Yes.
a little bit, and we can allow them to have their own space. And then we get into where they're getting into being a teenager. And all of a sudden, as parents, we panic. We're like, oh my gosh, I have a teenager. What am I going to do? Especially if we're first, right? Or
Yes.
especially if it's a teenager that's excessively moody or very withdrawn from us, if the relationship isn't that close and loving. So our tendency is to become a parent of a toddler again.
Mm-hmm.
We have a teenager, but we're acting like we have a toddler, and we follow them and we pay attention. We check on them and we text them and we open their door and look in on them, or we act like they're a toddler, but they want to be a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
They want to have their space. And I've had the opportunities to sit in groups of teenagers and talk to them at length about what they want from their parents, which has been very incredible for me because it's reaffirmed for me that I have the right idea. And it is that teenagers want their parents to trust their capacity and capability to make decisions and choose their way in life. So you think about it like this, okay? A teenager, once we get a child that's a teenager, they're like 13, 14 years old, we only have them for 4 more years. 4 or 5 more years.
Oh man, you had to say that.
So 4 or 5 more years they're gone, and the problem is that they have to be able to fly the coop and not crash. They need to be able to fly.
So
So if
like
we're
that deadline is approaching of, did I teach them enough? Did I?
Yes. But it's like this, right? We can't wrap them in bubble wrap and tuck them in the corner and keep them safe. And then at 18 and a half, we unwrap them and push them out the door, and they're going to be able to manage. Right?
Doesn't work that way.
We really, literally, as parents, we have to work our way out of a job.
Yep.
We have to, and it can be overwhelming. I get it. But even when our teenagers are struggling, I have to say that most parents, we're doing a good job. It's when we helicopter over them that they push back, and they get rebellious, and they get angry, and they make choices that aren't good choices, and they do stupid stuff that they have problems.
Yes.
Teenagers want us to trust them. And I always think about it this way, right? Like, I don't know about you, Lydia. You were probably a perfect teenager, but I was not. I was not. Our teenagers are going to make choices we're not going to love.
Right.
They are. But it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. And if they make a smaller mistake and they have to deal with consequences when they're in our home and they have our support, it's better for them to have those consequences now than to wait until they're out on their own and they have to face them as an adult and alone.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So we have to back up a little and have a little trust, but have conversations, right?
Yes. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to remind the parents that our job as parents, raising our teenagers, and that trust that they want from us, they want us to trust them. I think it also reflects on our trust in ourselves, that we've been doing our best. And we need to remember that these children came to us on purpose. We are the ones that I believe they chose to come and be a part of our family. And we made an agreement somewhere before we came to this life that we would work together to help each other. And whatever challenges they come with are the ones that you as their parent are the best equipped for helping them to get through that. And so if we can trust ourselves, I'm giving myself chill. We can trust ourselves that we have done our best, then we can transfer that trust over to them, that they will make the best choices, and we can help them through the mistakes and the consequences that they will have as we make mistakes. We're all human. We all make mistakes. I still make mistakes. I made one this morning.
But we expect our teenagers to be perfect, right?
I know,
and
right?
We're so worried about them, right? And,
well,
and you asked
ahead.
about a tool for the parents to use.
Yes.
And
in the last few minutes, also after this tool, make sure you tell our audience where they can find you, Melanie.
Okay. So
thank you.
So all of our children are unique. They're all different. So you could think about it like they all need a different mom, but you're their mom. And so each of your children, if you have more than one, need you to be a different kind of parent to them. And we don't think about that. We just think about them as our kids, right? And we get very ego invested in being like believing that we're getting it right. We're afraid to admit to anybody that we're not getting it right, when we're all just like, kids do not come with a manual. They don't come with a fix-it manual. Like, they don't come with any of that. So being willing to ask them. Parents don't think about this, excuse me, but being willing to go to your teenager and ask them, what kind of parent do you need me to be?
Oh, that's a beautiful question.
What do you need from me? And being willing to hear them and tell them how much you believe in them. Even when they're struggling. We assume if they have a problem in school that it's just that they're not trying. And I can tell you that 95% of the teenagers that parents have brought to me that were having problems in school, it wasn't because they weren't trying.
Right.
And if parents can get on the same team with their teenager, if they can get on the same team, they can help them solve the problem instead of assuming that the teenager and their attitude is the problem, because that's not the case.
It's not. And attitude gets blamed so much.
Mm-hmm.
And we push them into that attitude more when we say, you're
You do.
not
And
trying.
how are they supposed to let us know what they need if we are just like, you can't talk to me that way? Right?
Yeah.
We get this. We give attitude back to them.
I know.
Right? And then they give attitude to us, and we're like, don't have an attitude. And they're like, but they
You're
can't.
raising your voice at me.
Right? It's crazy. So we have to be the ones adult enough to own what we don't know,
mm-hmm.
and to check in with them and to express love to them and to express our belief that this problem that they are experiencing is one that we as a team with them can solve and look for solutions.
Yes, and work as a team. And going back to that trusting them, how better can you show that you're trusting them in their choices, but asking them, what kind of parent do you need me to be?
Right.
That's beautiful. So Melanie, tell us where we can find you and continue this conversation and get access to all of your wonderful awesomeness.
Thank you. So I have a brand new program for parents that I kind of want to put out there. It's an online program that you can purchase and have immediate access to, and it's a lifetime access. It's an incredible program I've worked on for a long time. It's just being launched and available right now. It's a parent source guide to help you rebuild that relationship with your teenager. It's really incredible. And so if we can post that in relation to this, then they can have access and look at the welcome video on that and get all the information about what that includes. I would love for parents to look at that. It's really, really great. It's like having 3 months of therapy at your fingertips immediately without having to wait for the appointments, to really help you get on the same team with your teenager and solve the problems that they're having. You can find me on Facebook, Healing Hearts and Homes, and that's also my website, healingheartsandhomes.com, because that's what we do. We heal families, and I just love, love, love teenagers. If you have a teenager that's struggling and you need more help than you can manage right now, please know that it's just like if you have pneumonia, you go to the doctor, right? If there's a problem, don't just continue to try and solve it on your own when you don't know what to do. It isn't that you're failing as a parent. It's not that you're failing. It's just that there's some struggle in the relationship that needs to be healed. Because really, in order for teenagers to succeed, you have to get on the same team with them. You do.
Yes, that's beautiful.
So I would love, love, love to have a conversation with anyone who wants some input on, a problem with their teenager that they want help with. And I would love for parents to look at this program. It really is incredible. And I am willing to, for any parents who contact me from seeing this great show with us today, or the follow-up, right? Observing it later on, I guess that's going to be available on YouTube, right?
Yes, it'll be on YouTube.
So follow
at least
up.
On YouTube.
Yeah, we can post it and you can follow up with it. And for anyone who looks at the program and purchases it in relation to this show, I'm actually giving a $1,300 discount.
Oh, that is so generous.
Price of the program. So I would just love for parents to have an opportunity to get this in their home and really make a difference, for their teenagers. Getting on the same page so that relationship gets healed.
Yes, and we're not failing as parents. You're never failing. It's always just a game, the game of life, they call it. Practice and play and get support from your other outside supporting team members as you need it. And if you don't know who that team is, Melanie is a great person to go to. And I love to support people as well. Thank you so much for being here, Melanie. I love all of these things that you've shared with us, and how we can love our teens back to life, love our families, and everyone can use a little more support and love this way.
And you can love yourself back to life, by the way.
Yes.
If you're not taking good care of you and you're the parent that's going to be a problem. So you've got to get some love that you're giving yourself to.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. Because you're the foundation of the family. They look to their parents. No matter what situation that parent picture looks like, kids look to their parents or their parent figure for whatever they're needing. All right, we're going to sign off until next week. I'm Lydia Taggart. This is Layers of Communication, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a great day. Have a great week.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Layers of Communication with your host, Lydia Taggart. Tune in next week as we discover the layers in order to communicate and connect down to your core on Lydia Taggart's Layers of Communication.